Welcome to the Age of Awakening.
Please identify yourself. Enter.
Have you guys ever given much consideration or thought to energy or energy healing? Have you ever wondered what component it plays in our ability to feel emotionally and physically and even spiritually at our peak? Well, this week, Dr. Christopher Macklin, who is an author, health and wellness practitioner, medical intuitive, and energy healer, he's on the show. And we've got some really great information for you. He addresses how to reduce stress, and so we can calm our bodies and our minds and our souls during our challenging times. And then he provides really great tips on how we can live more of a renewed, hopeful, and peaceful life, both physically, spiritually, and of course, mentally as well, too. He works with thousands of clients on a month internationally, and he provides a full range of healing services that addresses a spectrum of physical, mental, and emotional issues. He and his wife have founded the Global Enlightenment Project to serve the awakening of humanity, to support the healing needs of people all over the earth. And so he's doing some great work. I think you're going to really find this interesting. He's a fascinating gentleman, very smart, and I'm sure he's going to be sharing some things that perhaps you've not heard before. So before I get to my interview with Dr. Christopher, once again, welcome to the Triple P Life podcast. I'm Dr. J, your host. Been here almost 7 years now. Just in a few months, it'll be 7 years. Love every minute of it. I do this out of passion and love because I love to serve. I love to serve humanity. And the fact that you're there listening gives me an audience, and it gives me something that I'm so grateful for, because when they throw the last shovel of dirt on you, the only thing that matters is how many lives did you influence? Did you make a difference? Did you inspire people? Did you love people? Did you treat them kind, right? Will they feel a gap in their life when you leave this earth, not because you're physical being, because of your emotional and spiritual being? So hopefully I do that when you come here each and every week. Again, the smorgasbord of content that we provide for you. You never know what you're going to get. That's what makes this podcast really, really fun. But I'm leaning into that because the experts will tell you, man, find your niche, stay your niche. Health, you got to go health. You got to go fitness. You got to go whatever, right? Like, no, man, I'm a complex being. I love a lot of things, passionate about a lot of different things. And more importantly, I love interviewing really smart people who know way more than I do. I think that's one of my superpowers, is being able to step back and surround myself with really great, smart people so I can learn and grow. Some I take, some I don't. Who cares? Just like you here today. So enjoy my interview with Dr. Christopher and have a wonderful week. Triple P Nation. My guest this week is Dr. Christopher Macklin. Chris, I'm really excited to have you on. As we were talking in our pre-show open, we live in very difficult times right now. People are dealing with a lot of stress and anxiety, disconnect between the heart, mind, and body that's leading to a plethora of emotional, physical, and spiritual challenges. And this is the kind of work you do. So when I saw your PR people send this information, said, I got to get Dr. Christopher on because this is at the core of so many struggles people are dealing. So first of all, welcome to the Triple P Life podcast.
Oh, Dr. J, thanks for having me on. It's wonderful to be here. I'm excited, bless your heart.
Yeah. So, first of all, as my audience can clearly understand, that you're not from the United States, although you live in the United States now. You're originally from England. So first tell me, how did you get into this work? And then we'll get into what is the kind of work that you do and how do you help people. So how did you get into this kind of work?
Well, very quickly, I've been gifted from the, young age, and I could see things that people didn't see, through the veil and everything else. But, as a young child, when I was younger, about a day ago, 2 days ago.
You mean
I'm
both.
lying again.
You mean both.
Yeah, a couple of days ago when I was young. Yeah, I could see things, I was gifted, but I didn't really pursue it, and it's interesting. And I went through life, severe dyslexia, and went to school, I was offered to sponsor to do a degree, got a degree, master's in software and control systems, and worked on flight control systems. So really, the first part of my life was working in like corporate nonsense is probably a preferred word, so corporate nonsense. And, I used to do all these things, got paid a fortune. I was looking around thinking, there's got to be something better than this nonsense, and all there was. So anyway, because I made so much money, I started building houses, and then I had a really good idea. Let's build 176 apartments. Oh dear, that didn't go too well.
No, huh?
That's the kind of Trump thing, or these big build-up thing. Anyway, I did it, went bankrupt, marriage split up, and I found myself kind of living out of a car. It was weird. I was living out of a Volkswagen Polo, and I'm 6'5". For a couple of years, people used to let me stay at the houses. I used to get sponsored sometimes. I did healing, so people say, "Well, I'll get you a hotel room if if you do healing." I was sponsored to go to India. I went to all over Europe. And, it taught me a lot about stuff, because I had days without food for 21 days, 15 days, you name it, it happened and it was a struggle. I look back on it, but it really taught me a lot. And it taught me, like, let's get back to basics. Let's get back to, what's important in life. And it's not stuff, it's people, it's relationships, and anyway, I moved forward, went to Belize, really opened up. And then this lady was in Belize. She was being hounded by, deep state people, and I did a ceremony, and we did a God ceremony, and it stopped, and she goes, "Oh my God, that's amazing," So she said, "Come and live in Hollister, just outside Branson, Missouri." I said, "Okay," and I loved it. I mean, I love it in the Ozarks here, but I really started perfecting my gift, because when I went bankrupt, I had no money, but I had loads of time. It was like the freeing of everything, no debt, no money, but no debt, and it was great because I could really meditate. I could really focus on things. I taught myself to do meditations, understood my gifts. And from there, I moved forward, and, I perfected, I think great techniques. And they're kind of interdimensional, they're through portals and things. So it's like quantum healing, and from that, I took it forward and kept perfecting. And they taught me cause and effect, the beings I work with. And here we are today, It's amazing. I love what I do, I've got such a passion for it. And, I think, the mental state of not just our nation here, because I'm American citizen, of course, in 2017, but actually all over the world, the mental state of everyone at the moment is people are really struggling. They're losing it. They're losing, they're struggling for food, struggling for housing. Yeah, it's a pretty bad situation at the moment.
So there's a lot to unpack there. The first thing, I think you actually really started off this. You said, I was able to see things. Can you define that? What does that mean? What did that mean to you? You were able to see things.
Do you really want to know?
Yeah, I mean, sure, why not?
Well, I was talking to somebody one day and they said, "Wow, what you can see is either a curse or a gift." And I said, "Well, I choose it as a gift." When I was 4, I was lying in my bedroom and I was just looking over it, and I saw an entity, what they call entities, interdimensional beings. Jesus talked about demonic entities. This was one. It looked like a big old velociraptor thing. And I was going, "Dad, there's a dinosaur thing in the corner of my room." And he comes running it. Where? But it's there, and I realized he couldn't see it. A lot of these entities and attachments and things that you have, people can't see. And of course, having the gift to see it means that I can remove them and, get them out of people's lives, because they do attach. They're like parasites. They attach, they send you negative thoughts, they affect your intestinal issues, they hang on your neck and shoulders. And it's a spirit. You can't see it. And so I thought it was a real great gift that I could see this. I could see saucers in the sky, things like craft. And, "Dad, there's a flying saucer." "Oh, I can't see it." Again, because it was cloaked. If you could see through the veil, you can see them in this world, in this third dimensional world. You can't, so it was really interesting.
Well, I'm sure that initially, is that something you kind of suppressed because people didn't understand it? And perhaps you didn't understand it either. And you were concerned maybe that people think you're a little crazy, saying, "Hey, I can see something," and no one else can see it. So
Oh,
was that a
yeah.
bit of a challenge initially?
Oh, yeah. I think my father said, "Well, if you keep having these nightmares, we're going to have to take you to a psychiatrist or something." I thought, "I better be quiet because
Sure.
we don't want that," and I even realized at the age of 4. What was interesting is this entity was there, and my father said, "Go back to sleep. It's a bad dream." I was okay, so I was there, and I suddenly got, I don't know where it came from, this inner kind of God strength. Like, I just said, "Get out of my room." It went. I thought, wow, that was interesting. So they do have to leave, if you can get the power behind you. And that's the whole point. I think people have got to start taking their power back and become sovereign beings. I think the days of the guru and giving you power away to different factions of religion and everything else is over. I believe, and again, I believe in one God, many paths. People have their paths, Christianity, Buddhism, whatever, makes them comfortable with those spiritual, things they do, like maps of intent, prayers, or meditations, or anything else. That's all good, in my opinion. But I believe in one God, prime creator of all it is, And I think, once you take your power back, you've cracked it. Once you really get into that, it's a space of gratitude. Most people aren't grateful. Well, my car's broken. Oh no, and I couldn't afford a steak tonight. Can't. All they're doing is talking about can't or didn't or hadn't. It hadn't happened. If you turn around and say, "Wow, I've got a plate of food on the table. What a blessing that is," and I bless it every night because I've been without a number of times, and I realise how important it is. If you've got a roof over your head, a house, wow, thank you, God, for the blessing of having that. And if you get into this blessing, it's not, I know we're taught to get a gratitude stone. So, right, God, you got 5 minutes. I'm grateful for my wife, my car, my house. We're done. It doesn't work like that. To me, gratitude is a way of life. You live it, and I think that's really important. And that comes with surrender as well, which is, my belief is God's always got your back. So once you get into that prosperity mindset where you're not saying, "Oh my God, how am I going to pay my bill?" God's got your back. It'll get paid somehow. And miracles have happened in my life, where suddenly the money's been back and I've been able to do things. And so, where the money comes from, not up to you. It's up to God, the universe, whatever you want to call God, or Jesus. It doesn't matter, So,
I'm glad you mentioned that because one of the things that this brand is built upon is prosperity, is building a prosperity mindset. And I think so many people, when they hear that, they think about, monetary wealth. And sure, that could be a byproduct of being prosperous, but prosperous is way beyond having money in the bank or a nice house or whatever it might be, right? It's having that mindset that looking at all the blessings that do exist around you, being grateful for the relationships that you have, the fact that you get able to get up in the morning and fulfill or live a purpose, if so you choose, or not, you can just sit on a couch and be a vegetable and let your life wither away. That's not prosperity. Prosperity of mindset, prosperity of energy, prosperity of love, prosperity of health, prosperity potentially of wealth. And my belief is the more prosperity mindset you build, the inevitable outcome is you will begin to experience more monetary wealth as well too. It's just how the universe flows and works, right? It's interconnected, as you mentioned as well too. So I'm very,
oh,
very grateful
absolutely.
that you said that. And at the core of it is gratitude, because if you're in a scarcity mindset, right, you're blocking the flow of prosperity to you. And again, this is a topic I've talked about before, and sometimes it's difficult for people to understand, but scarcity mindset is when we feel or think that there's finite or lack of in my life.
Yeah,
That's scarcity,
absolutely.
right? I'm not 6'4". I'm only 5'11". I'm driving a Prius instead of whatever. Pick the car. You understand what I'm saying, right? It's
Yeah,
always
yeah,
what I
absolutely.
don't have. What I don't
Yeah.
have. So, how does someone build a gratitude mindset to begin to tap into this prosperity mindset?
Well, I think you have to work on a lot of your traumas. I think, use some spiritual practice like meditation. We have a fast track method of getting rid of layers of emotion. We can one-to-ones, we can start off with 81, 162, 324, 648 layers. That's a lot. On the general group, we have a general group twice a week where, it's by donation. If you don't have any money, please come on because that's why I do it. And, if you go and sit in front of a practitioner like a psychotherapist, psychiatrist, psychologist, they'll poke at something, you bawl your eyes out, you talk about it, you transmute it, and then we go on to the next thing. So in an hour, how many things can you actually transmute in an hour? Probably, I don't know, 4, 6, 7, something like that. And the reason why I can do it is it's using, off-planet beings because they pull the emotion out. So they pull that layer of energy out, which means once it's gone, you just feel the residual effect. You don't feel the whole effect of that layer. And I think that's really important. And it's really helped so many people because unless you get rid of your traumas and I see people, wow, I was really angry with my mother-in-law because she da. I said, what's within you that's really triggering you, because you shouldn't be angry with her. Their narrative is their narrative. I talked to my father once and he was talking about global warming, cows passing wind creates global warming. I said, okay. I said, I don't believe that, but that's okay. You say, I said, where did you find out? Oh, the BBC told me. I said, okay. I said, well, let me tell you, I don't believe that, Dad. It's, and, there's a lot of things behind it that kind of say doesn't exist. But regardless of that, I said, look, I want to tell you that your truth from the BBC is your truth and narrative. I'm not going to judge you on that. And my truth is it's a pile of nonsense, and you shouldn't judge me on that. Who's right or wrong? There is no right or wrong. I think it depends what research you do, where you are in life. And, I blessed him and said, yeah, you carry on with your narrative, It's interesting. The biggest thing that, I really support is no judgment, and I think that's really important because people have their narratives and, if you go judging them, that's where we all get separation. And I think you've got to, all the prayers we have, the Melchizedek prayers I've got on my website, there's no judgment there. It said not for us to judge them, therefore we bring them before you, God, for justice, or, no judgment. It's always no judgment, like the entities. If I pull it out of someone, we send it back to God with unconditional love and forgiveness. That's key to me, I think forgiveness, it doesn't mean to say that if you don't have really negative people around you, that you can't set boundaries as well, because that's okay, if they're really negative, they suck the life out of you because it's all about me, me, me. You can spend the night, they say, oh my God, they have dinner with you, and then when they're gone, I'm exhausted, well, that's not useful to you, or anybody else. And so sometimes you have to set boundaries out. Look, I love you, but you just need to sit over there because I can't have you in my field, it's too exhausting. And, it's amazing.
So talk about that. You said in my field. So when you say that, right, because you were talking about negative people and how, even with a positive disposition, you may have a positive disposition. I have read that negative people have a 20 times greater pull, even on a positive person, towards the negative than the opposite. So your surrounding, your environment, the energy that you want to be present in. Talk about that and how important it is to protect it. And, there are times where you have to disassociate from those negative people because they're only going to pull you into their vortex of toxicity.
Absolutely, and I think that's key in life. We live in a bubble. We've got 40 acres of land here in Missouri. We built a house here. It's full of trees. It's like the rainforest. It's gorgeous. You've got so many animals. And, it kind of shields you from the external energy because right now in America, the energy changes on a daily basis. People, you can even feel the collective energy. Like some days it feels like the twilight zone, and then other days it lightens up a bit. Each day's changing. And I'm finding, like I say, people, if you don't realize it's collective energy, you start to think it's you. But I think, one of the key instruments is getting in a safe space, be able to navigate this world. I think you have to get a sacred space where you only let people in who can have a laugh with you, can have fun, don't berate you, don't judge you. I think that's really important. And, that's why we have very few friends, as you can imagine, because even my father once, I was on the phone to him, he goes, I've got to tell you. I said, what's that, Dad? He goes, you're absolutely barking mad. I said, you know what? That's the biggest compliment you've
Yeah.
ever given me. Yeah, I'm barking mad. I love it, So,
Yeah.
and he goes, what? I said, yeah, because he normally, early life, he used to berate me. Now he's 91, he's chilled out a bit. But you can imagine someone in a third dimensional world doing what I'm doing. It's like, this guy's nuts. So, yeah, I think it's really important. And nowadays, also doing your spiritual practice, whether it's yoga, meditation, praying, it doesn't matter if it's Christian prayers or, we've got prayers on there that help with food. We've got things. In fact, one of our food prayers in Pennsylvania, it's basically revibration of food, blessing the souls, the animals and plants, and removing any ungodlike particles from the food. It's powerful. It works. And this medicine man got off. He goes, would you mind if we use this on the reservation? I don't want to steal it off you. I said, I'd be honoured, And he actually translated it on a piece of cardboard, which I've still got, and he's using it on the reservation in Pennsylvania. And, those things to me are such a blessing.
It is. It's remarkable because we started this interview talking about the current state environment in which our culture, our world currently exists. And you were talking about collective energy over the last month or so. If you pay any attention to the media, people's emotions have been like yo-yos. As the stock market's up, they're happy. As it's down, they're pissed. It's up,
Oh,
they get happy, and
yeah.
they get so. So, so would you agree? First and foremost, you talked about a spiritual practice. I'll get to that in a second. One of the keys is to protect your environment and to minimize and create barriers of those negative entities and or particularly energies like the media. Just shut it out. There's very rarely any positive or benefit listening to people who are simply trying to manipulate you through whatever narrative that they find is, they want to follow.
Absolutely, and I think it's key. And I think it could become addictive. All this information right now, I mean, the mainstream media, we all know what the mainstream media is. I never watch it at all. But even the truth-seeking community, there's certain channels that try and bait you into, oh, you've got to sign up for this channel for the truth,
Sure.
and da-da-da. And, one of the things I always do, which I'd really encourage everyone to do, is use your intuition, like have a look at the percentage of correctness of that channel. Is it 100% correct? Most things aren't. But if it's anything over 70, I think they're doing their best to produce, good information. If it's below 70, then I would shut it off and not watch it. But the problem is people have like 50 channels, they're watching different things all day, getting themselves all riled up over nothing. You're better off just watching really good channels who are positive, who give you a positive message and don't say, oh, we're all doomed, well, we're not doomed, but very important, I think. And it's like a lot of other things. I mean, I deal with all sorts of things, addictions like drug addiction, porn addiction, you know, even on Facebook lately, through my channel, you're getting like robots where the guy's walking down the street with a robot and then they're having babies and they're having this and that. With porn, it's the same, it's an act. It's losing that love. It's losing that connection. It's losing that energetic connection because they're trying to dehumanize people.
Hmm.
And I think it's so important to switch that stuff off. I mean, I never watch anything like that. I always try and watch nice things or just listen to good music. There's some good music around. So we love music. We love having parties. We grill on a patio. We have fun. We have a good laugh. Is it easy right now? Probably not. And another thing I think I'm seeing a lot of as well is the motivation factor's gone. Even for me a little bit in terms of like, for example, I've got to have a shower. Oh, blimey, that's a chore. I've got to cook. Oh, that's a chore. I used to love cooking. But, I'm seeing everyone, including ourselves to an extent, everything's become a chore at the moment. And I think it's because of the collective energy is wearing us out. I really do.
I think of energy as a fuel tank. We have a love fuel tank, an energy fuel tank. You know, there's physiological things that contribute to it as far as our rest, our hormonal levels, our nutrition, our exercise that are going to fuel that energy tank and even positive relationships, loving relationships. So when you take stock of your life and you look at what fills my tank and what drains my tank, I think if you would look at most people currently, they have drain the tank side of the ledger is much bigger because they don't act intentionally enough to realize is that you have to take inventory and really create more energy creating type of activities mentally, physically, spiritually, or eventually what happens is when your energy is depleted, then there becomes a physiological crisis, right?
Absolutely.
And that's
Yeah,
when
yeah.
disease begins to happen. And that's when emotional and, psychological challenges begin to occur as well, too. So maybe that's an oversimplification, Doc, but would you agree that that's a contributing factor to a lot of the ill health in our
Oh,
country today?
yeah. I think it's the main factor. I mean, some new things are coming up. For example, I'm seeing people with a reduction in pancreatic enzymes, so they're not digesting properly. Why is that? Because emotion bleeds into your pancreas, it paralyzes, so the glands that produce the enzymes aren't going through the gallbladder into the bile duct and things like that. Also, emotion bleeds into the lower intestine, so, it kind of, again, paralyzes it. So maybe it's running about, who knows, 40, 50%. So when you eat, as it gets further down, it backs up, you feel blur. It bleeds into the thyroid, the hormones are off balance, parathyroid. So you start leaching calcium out your bones. There's so many implications, I think. To me, emotion is one of the prime leaders of disease, or illness. I mean, obviously there's toxicity in the food and different things, but I think emotion is one of the keys for sure.
Early on, you mentioned about the work you do is quantum healing. Can you parse that down a little bit for the average listener, what that means?
Yeah, it means it's interdimensional healing. It's actually through portals. So what do we mean by that? Well, I was born as a Melchizedek being, long story, who cares? But I work with the Melchizedek beings. They're from the ultimate dimension. So to be able to get them to do things in people's bodies, you've got to actually open a portal from the ultimate dimension around people and then maybe bond it into some sacred geometry like a Merkaba. In that way, these beings can come down through the portal and start doing things in your body. Because, of course, they're energy in this dimension, but in their dimension, they're an actual being. So they can start doing, what do you call it, psychic surgery, things like that. It might look sad, a bit far-fetched, but I do it every day, and it really helps people. So, but that's why it's quantum. We also have something else, which is interesting, which is protocol, which strips out stealth pathogens, which are all manufactured, things like Lyme, HIV/AIDS, Agent Orange, Morgellons. If you've heard of Morgellons, if you've got Morgellons, you have Lyme disease, and then you've got all the stuff in the latest things that have turned up. It strips that out, and how do you do that? Again, quantum, what we do is split people's timeline in two, put them on a path of divine alignment, complete wellness, where all the particles and the stealth pathogens, everything else is out of the body. On the other timeline to the sun, we separate all those things out and lock it on a timeline to the sun, so as time goes on, it strips it out. But I think one of the biggest things right now is DNA damage, from things like agrobacterium in GMO foods or CRISPR technology, which is in the latest, what, and that's damaging people's DNA. So after about 15 weeks of doing this timeline splitting and getting the vibration, we then invoke a DNA change where they, again, the beings can come, repair all the chromosomes, connect all the helixes together, and reset the DNA. And they start with the cell where life began, and then the cells around it until it's done. That takes about 15 weeks as well. I reset my DNA. It's really interesting. I'll share this with you. In 2009, I reset my DNA. So before that, my blood was O negative. Okay. So I was in hospital last year. I got hit by some weapon thing, long story with that. And it melted my heart valve flaps together. So I had a bicuspid valve. I got sick really quick. And I asked the beings, can we do it? They said, we don't have time. You're not going to be here if we don't. You need a valve replacement. Great. Well, one of the Melchizedek thing is my heart's very big. It's the size of a volleyball. So the opening, they didn't have a valve big enough for the opening. So they had to do open heart surgery, reduce the size of the hole and put the biggest valve they have in. I had that done last year in 4th of October. And anyway, they said, oh, you're losing blood, because my platelets don't clot. We're going to have to give you blood. I said, yeah, it's O negative. And they said, well, we have to check. They came back. So no, it's not. It's A negative. And I never knew it changed. But, DNA, RNA, immune system, it's all connected. So it was really interesting. I thought I'd share that with you. It's a bit crazy, but
Yeah, I've never heard of that before. That's the first time I've ever heard that even being possible.
well, I can prove it because I've got a little booklet from the UK when I used to give blood, years ago. And of course, you don't think about your blood type. You just think it's going to stay the same. And then obviously after 2009, it completely changed. So that was quite interesting.
So you talk about these entities. So these entities is something that we draw to us. How do they, connect with us as they pass? You were talking about, third and fourth dimensional. How does that happen?
I mean, some of these entities can shapeshift into this dimension. Most of them are from fourth dimension. You've got things like, and Jesus talked about demonic entities. You break them down. The main ones, you've got Anunnaki, you've got Draconians, you've got Luciferians, you've got Archons, and then you've got kind of snake-type beings, first and second dimensional snake being things. And, people go, oh my God, it kind of frightens them. But again, you can remove them. You have the ability to remove them yourself, but most people can't get that energy like, get out of my body. But they do attach, and it's like the Luciferians. I think those were the ones that Jesus was describing as like demonic, because when you remove them, they can talk people's bodies or speak through your voice box in a cackly, raspy voice. They're pretty snarly, but, we remove them on a daily basis because if your vibration's low, think about this, these entities have got a low vibration. When you're depressed and upset or whatever, or, your vibration's on their level, they can attach to you. Once you raise your vibration and release all the emotion and your vibration's a lot higher, they can't even get near your energy field. So in the meanwhile, we do have a protection prayer, which I always tell people while we're doing the healing, make sure you say it at least 3 times a day. and it'll keep these things out, you know. I like to word map of intent better really than prayer, but, you know. But yeah.
So would someone know if these entities are present? Like, is that something we could be conscious of, or is that something only someone who does the work that you do would be aware of?
No, I think you could be conscious yourself if you know what to look for. First thing is, you know, if you have an empty attachment like ananarchodraconin, they sit in the abdomen, so your abdomen gets bloated. You know, again, it paralyzes the lower intestine, so your digestive is bad. Tapped in the lower back, after a while, even though it's an energetic being, it does damage the L4, L5 disc. So you start to get back problems. It holds on the shoulders and neck, so your shoulders and neck are always tight. And it sends you negative thoughts. Like if you get a word, say, oh God, the boss can't stand you, he's just about to fire, no one likes you here. Wherever you go, these entities send you negative thoughts. But because of the universal laws, the keys of Enoch, they're not allowed to say I, you know, they have to say you. And it's very important to see, was that a you thought? Because if it is, it's not your thought at all. But it's so easy for us to, when you wander around work and, you know, no one likes you, you get all these thoughts and you convert it to an I thought and you think it's you. And it's really not. So it's so important to police your thoughts, you know, all the time, I think.
And the I thought is only direct from the supreme being, God, correct?
Yeah, yeah. Or you know, if it's an I thought, it's
Yeah,
you. You know, the
sure,
keys
through
of
him.
Enoch, yeah, exactly. You know, the
Mhm.
rules state that you can't manipulate people in that way. You can only go so far. So they keep saying, you are no good. You're pathetic. No one likes
Sure.
you. You. And if you recognize that, you can, you know, you realize, oh, I've got an attachment. And of course, with overwhelming thoughts 24 hours a day, you know, people start to get depressed because they start to think that they're not a good person and things like that, you know. So very interesting how they operate.
I was listening to a pastor on an interview, and he was talking about fear and how fear is the work of the devil. He was saying that, there's no fear with God, right? And
No,
so when you're stuck in a constant state of fear, right, it's the demonic entity that is controlling you because you're not being in abundance, you're not being in gratitude, you're not being in faith, right? So I don't obviously paraphrasing what he said, but he said when you find yourself in fear, it means you're out of God.
absolutely. Yeah. You're really on a different path, you know, and it's so important to come back. But I think some of the things that are really important as well, you know, how many times you hear, well, you know, I hate my job, I hate this, not happy with that, you know. Well, change it like right now, you know. Change it, you know. And I mean, oh well, I can't afford it. But you know, if you step out in faith, you know, I had a reading 20 years ago. Let's share this with you if you don't mind. So this lady, she's about 84, she's probably not here now. And it was just outside Liverpool, and I sat there, and she started doing the reading. Thank you. Wrote these things down. Thank you. And this was 20 years ago when I was in England, and she said, "Well, get a new wife. Okay, you're going to move to America. Okay, you're going to live off donations, and you're going to do healings for a living." I thought, well, okay. I didn't say she's crazy. I just thought, well, you know, let's see. You know. Oh, it arrived, you know, it's exactly what I'm doing. I always think about that lady. She was absolutely 100% correct. Amazing, amazing.
Yeah, so do you need to be open and receptive to that? Because I know there are people listening who are like, that's crazy. That doesn't happen, right? You just know how people are, right? Some people are totally open to it and they're like, yeah, I believe that's possible. And others like, no, there's no way that's even possible. So, in other words, does the receiver, us, need to be open to that, to be aware of it and conscious of it to happen? Or is it going to happen anyway, whether you're open to it or not?
Well, sometimes I've had not a lot of people who aren't open to it, but some people, and sometimes, oh, well, you know, I don't think I believe it, but let's see. You take the entity off them, oh my God, I felt that leave. And once that's left, that starts to give them faith, like, yeah, oh, this is happening.
Sure.
So, you know, sometimes it just takes that little small action or something. But, you know, it is good. I mean, the healing's slower because if you're not open to it, it means your vibration's not there. You're blocking the healing a bit. So it can take a lot longer than people who are really receptive. Come on, guys, let's get on with it. So, absolutely, you know, I think does it completely block it? It can do, you know. But most people are open enough that if they come for a healing, they want to get well and they want to try it out. And as soon as you start feeling energies and things happen in your, you know, adrenals and, So many people got adrenal fatigue because of emotion. It just bleeds into the adrenals and paralyzes them. Neurochemical off balance. You get ADD, PTSD, depression, anxiety, OCD, and so, yeah, all these things, it's all emotional. But it's funny, I always think about the guru thing. I don't believe in gurus. I think you are your own guru, and I feel like I'm a facilitator to get you back to where you should be, your own guru. Take your power back and be in a really blissy place, but it takes work. It's not a one session thing. It takes a while because we're living in an extreme. I mean, I don't know what to tell the listeners if you don't know that this is an extreme world. But, I mean, my father, I spoke to him last Sunday and he was talking, well, we're all going to be a banana republic world if we're not careful. I said, well, go and get a £5 note or £10 note. So he brings it. I said, what does this say on the front of it? He says, oh, it says, I promise to pay you £5. Okay. I said, so it promises to pay, but it's not paying you £5. It's a promise to pay note. It's debt note. He goes, oh my God, I never realised that. And I said, do you realise that every time it's in your pocket that you've got it, you're paying interest on it, whether it's through taxes or whatever. And I said, so when all that stops and we go back to some other currency where it's not a debt note, and that's why I think people are so stressed now, because since 1971, of course, the bills have lost, 97% of their value, so they're worthless, and I think that stresses people out a lot. It's crazy. When I first got it, I hated money because I'd just gone bankrupt, and I saw this pastor, and I hate money, can't accept money for healing. So you used to do a healing, and you get like a few tomatoes or lettuce, and so she said, look, I want to have coffee with you. I said, okay. So I sat down with coffee with her, and she said, so you hate money? And I go, yeah. She goes, well, okay, so you're accepting tomatoes and lettuce for your healings. What's that? And I said, well, an exchange, energy exchange. She said, well, the dollar bill's energy. It's not money per se. It's just some energy. She said, so why have you got such an issue? I suppose so. And she said, can you pay, if you go to the electric company, can you pay with tomatoes and lettuce or chicken? And I go, no, what do they want? The dollar bill. Okay, I'm getting it. So she really helped me along with that, because of course I had emotion with it because I'd just gone bankrupt, and it was an interesting time.
What's hard for a lot of people to understand is when you chase money, you just push it further away. In other words, when your sole focus is the accumulation of money, your ability to attract money drops precipitously. It's purpose and value, right? Value creation for other people in the work you do or their service that you provide. The greater value you provide, the more money flows to you. And that's never taught anywhere. I mean, I
Yeah.
learned that, I don't know, 25 years ago. So I didn't learn in school or whatever. And it's one of the prime reasons so many people struggle in the scarcity mindset. I want to ask you a question, or I just want to make this one other comment is I hope Triple P Nation, I hope you guys realize, perhaps maybe for the first time ever, that there's a real energy component to health and sickness. And because we're inundated in this Western medical, I got to watch my words here. I was going to call it mythology, but a lot of what they do is mythology. It's not backed by science. In fact, over 80% of the procedures that are done every single day in doctors' offices has never been proven in a double-blind study, ever, right? So we're inundated in this big pharma, big med culture, and energy is never ever considered a component. So let me give you an example. I see this a lot in my practice. I see a patient come in with a certain condition and we do a workup. We find what the underlying issues are and we put a plan together and we start to really make some significant change. And after a month or two, objectively, they should be 100% better,
Yeah.
but they're exactly where they were before. They
Oh,
hadn't
wonder why.
changed, right? They hadn't changed at all. And so what I quickly began to realize is that there was the emotional component. And as I started to dig deeper, I find out what's going on in your life. I'm going through a divorce. My father's dying. Or, I can't tell you how many times people just started, getting emotional. I was abused as a child. So people have stuff, right? And the stuff you talked about, right? That's just hanging on to them, that negative energy, you call it entities, whatever, unless you release that. Talked about traumas. We had a doc on about a month or so ago. He talked about closing the loop. That will affect you for the rest of your life until you confront it and deal with it.
Absolutely, yeah, it will. And, like I said, the layers of traumas. The problem is with this world, people are, especially an empath, because there's certain people who are really empathic. I mean, when I was younger, about a couple of days ago, I was really empathic. And, if someone taught me I'm that, because there's different types of people on this planet. Starseed people have come down to help, and there's, average human beings who are learning. And, if you're a high empath, you ingest the emotion 10 times stronger. Someone talks behind your back. It used to make me almost like sick where I'd throw up. So, but, and of course, your parents said, don't be so sensitive. It's ridiculous. Well, I am sensitive, and therefore I've had to learn to navigate this world with the sensitivity I've got. I mean, now I'm pretty strong. I don't worry. What people think of me is their business, not mine. And you have to really learn to start loving yourself, really, knowing, if you know you're a good person and you're doing your best in this world, are you perfect? Is anyone perfect?
No.
Let me ask him. Oh, no, that'd be a no. but but we're doing our best, and that's the thing. If you service to others, I think you have to realize that, yeah, I'm a good person, so that's okay. If people criticize you, that's up to them, and you're always going to get criticism from somebody. It's just the world we live in.
There's a really good book that was written about, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago. It's I Don't Give an F. That was the title of the book, right? And it came down to the author was talking about your life will change when you stop giving an F, when you stop caring what other people think or say, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You can't live your life for other people
No, you
because you
can't.
can't make them happy. Why? Because in most cases, they're not happy themselves. So there's nothing that you can possibly do to make them happy. So live your life, your path, right? And what makes you happy. I just want to take a second because you talked about an empath. And for those that don't know, right, that's somebody really with a real heightened sensibility to deeply understand emotions, people's emotions, right? Sometimes to the point where they start to take them on as their own.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
So I wanted to clarify that if people hadn't heard that before. So, Dr. Christopher, this has been a lot of fun. So, as we wrap up here, you had mentioned earlier a couple thousand people a week you're helping. So, talk about that and how people can connect with you if they want to learn more about what you're doing and maybe seek you out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's called, our website's the www.globalenlightenmentproject.com. And, it's a project of our ministry, which is Christopher Macklin Ministry. It's a 501c3. We do lots of different healings if anyone wants it. We do general groups twice a week, which is 5 p.m. Thursday Central Time and 11 a.m. Saturday. It's a whole hour. We cover a lot of things, blood sugar, digestive, heart issues. If you want to come on that, it's by donation. If you have no money, please look, I've been there, got the t-shirt on that one. Just come on if it helps you. We do specialized groups where there's 15 people on, we talk to them. We do one-to-ones where I talk directly one-to-one with people. We do a lot of other things. We've got a load of meditations for things like mental health issues, OCD, PTSD, ADD. And it helps because what it does is release the emotion which is directly associated with that condition. And then what it does is work on the neurochemical balance, like the serotonin, the adrenals, GABA, dopamine, melatonin, to get that balanced so that you can actually get out of that condition. All emotional driven, of course. So, yeah, we do a lot, So have a look at the website, and yeah.
And we'll make sure to put the link to your website, globalenlightenmentproject.com, in our show notes. So we'll make it easy for people to go find you. Just click it and go check out Dr. Christopher. I want to thank you for taking time out of your day and sharing your
Pleasure.
knowledge and wisdom. It's just very, very interesting. And I get for some people, this is maybe the first time they've heard that, but trust me when I tell you, there is an energy element in our world. Dr. Chris, I talk about it as being the first true internet. It started at the beginning of time. We just
Yeah.
didn't have to pay for it. It was all around us. All we needed to do was tap into that energy and we can, feed off of it,
Oh,
both
yeah.
negatively and positively. But it's a real thing. And you brought a lot of great information today. So I want to thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Thanks, Dr. J. Bless your heart.
Thank you so much. So Triple P Nation, that's Christopher Macklin, Dr. Christopher Macklin, excuse me. Check out his website, globalenlightenmentproject.com, and learn more about the work he's doing. So as I always say, guys, you be you. Just be the best you, and I promise you will always empower your dreams, ignite your passion, and accelerate your prosperity. Until next week, be well.